All right. So, so chapter 9 today is what we're going over on kinship, and chapter 10, we're going to seamlessly roll straight on into chapter 10 in conjunction with this because it's on kinship and gender. So we're going to start with the kinship, and I see Brian's got his book open already. What is that? What page is that? 215? Yeah, so some of you who have already looked through the kinship chapter have already seen some nice little pretty pictures, like color-coded circles and triangles and lines and equal signs and stuff like this all through the kinship chapter. And so part of what we're going to take notes about, part of what we're going to practice in this unit is how what these symbols mean and how anthropologists use them when they're conducting ethnography, finding an informant, all those. In chapter 3, when we talked about doing ethnography or doing anthropology, when we learned all of those ethnographic techniques and informed consent and all that information that we had from chapter 3, we use in doing ethnography these symbols and these practices that are that you're going to find in your book. And what page is that one on? That one on 229. Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one. Okay, so kinship and gender both are huge topics in cultural anthropology. In many different social sciences and humanities disciplines, kinship and gender studies are huge. And I found this book over the Christmas break. It was $1 on this library website. I think it cost me $2.99 to have it shipped, but it was just $1 itself. And so I thought, oh, I've got to get this, because kinship and gender, well, gender is one of my favorite things to teach, but kinship is one of the reasons why I have gray hair. Because this gal who wrote this book, the very first paragraph on the preface, I brought it in so that I could read it to you. She says, ... I learned in the course of teaching kinship for over a 10-year period that it is often a difficult topic to teach and painful for students to learn about. That's sentence number 2 in the very first paragraph of the book. And when I read that, I laughed out loud, and I recalled my time in cultural anthropology class early on, and she is right. And as a matter of fact, painful is maybe mild in some cases, because kinship is such a complicated topic for anthropologists to cover, and it throws students off balance because the way that other cultures besides our own measure who you're related to and who your daddy is in particular is completely foreign to us. We might as well be talking about Martians because they're completely foreign to us around the world. So let me see. Let me just get some basic notes for you to take in your notebook today, and then we're going to get some symbols and some basic explanations. So there's
we're going to be doing like the family tree.
Yes, this is about family trees and stuff, and that's a key part of ethnographies is doing the family tree of your informant, whoever your key person, your key contact is in the culture that you're talking about, because I'll tell you this in just a second when we get some notes on the board, but yeah, kinship and who you're related to and how you're related to them is the key most important relationship that anybody can have in the world. Even in some modern day industrialized societies, if they had a background in foraging or horticulture or pastoralism, any of our subsistence strategies, kinship and how you make economizing decisions about sharing food and resources I said that backwards. How you make economizing decisions about sharing food and resources in any of those subsistence strategies is directly related to who your kin group is. And you go from there to decide what job do you fulfill in the kin group, what job does he fulfill, and how much of the haul, so to speak, do you get a share of based on your relationship to the kin group.
I was adopted, but I've always identified more with my adopted family than my biological family.
Well, yeah, because they're your family.
Yeah. So is there a shift or a term for that?
No, just adopted. Not that I know of. No, in throughout the world, adopted children are just children. like the rest of us. And so we would just draw you, when we get to the point, you're jumping ahead, trying to draw your own family already, but that's what you're immediately going to do. You're immediately going to be like, oh, I've got these symbols, I want to try to draw some of these charts that are, pictured in the textbook. But we would just draw you right along like any other baby that was produced from a union, because that's what you are. It's a baby or a child or offspring or whatever word you want to use it from a union, right?
So is kinship different than family then?
Kind of. Yes and no. Remember how I said it was painful? Yeah. Let's start there. Okay, so first let's talk about this word. There's a particular word that I want to address first before we actually get to the kinship word, and that is relatedness. Okay? So, in our culture, we don't typically say, oh, I'm kin to somebody. We say, some of us do. I mean, that's appropriate to say, oh, they are my kin, or I'm kin to somebody. Sometimes we say, I'm related, or they're my relatives, right? In anthropology, we use the word relative. However, we're a little bit more inclusive than you and I might be when we refer to somebody as our relative. In anthropology, people are related to each other even when friendship is the bond. Okay? So relatedness describes the type bond people have to each other. Relatedness describes the type of bond that people have to each other. Of course, some of the bonds that our mind immediately goes to would include what? Sister, brother, or a bloodline, right? So this unit we're going to talk a lot about bloodlines. But also relatedness can be about friendship, can be about bonds of friendship. And so in anthropology, we would refer to BFFs as being related to each other. Well, in what way? Well, she's my BFF. That's how, okay? So in anthropology, it is appropriate to say that your bestie is related to you, okay? Because we look at the bond that binds you. We look at the type of reciprocity that you share, that maintains your relationship over time. Okay, so there's blood, there's friendship. There also might be a business relationship. A lot of times, a lot of the examples that we're going to use over the course of this unit about people being either within the same bloodline from each other or friends with each other, usually those things lead to business arrangements between those individuals, particularly when it is time for people in business partners' bloodlines to get married. When it's time for you to get a husband, well, if I was married to my grandfather's best friend's grandson, and they want to kind of make a handshake deal on the business partnership that they formed when I married my grandfather's best friend's grandson, then maybe you, my granddaughter, should probably marry that other person's grandson again, to kind of like seal the deal, the business arrangement, the friendship, the relatedness for additional generations. Okay, so we're going to talk about how that works. Okay, so now let's get to the word kinship. So kinship is the distinction of how people are related either by blood or by marriage. And we have a couple of words, a couple of vocabulary words to refer to these things. Kinship refers to bloodlines and marriage lines that people share. We're not finished. I've got a longer explanation for this. I want to stop really quick though and ask Macy, this marker I didn't realize was not very fuerte, so can you see it okay? Okay, I'm just going to switch markers. Okay. So kinship refers to bloodlines and marriage lines that people share, but kinship is, as I said before, it is the single most important relationship that people have around the world that identifies them for the type of business they're going in. for their share in a family fortune, for their access to family or community-held land, or in the case of the Maasai, for instance, cattle and goats, like we discussed. For your political affiliation, did I say that one? For who you're going to marry in the future, because most societies around the world, surprise, most societies around the world arrange marriages. They don't do it the way that we do. And there's all kinds of important reasons. Kinship even determines, in some cases, what gender you're going to be seen as in your social group. Right? I mean, because sometimes you might think, okay, wait a minute. What do I mean by gender? Well, we haven't gotten to the difference between somebody's sex and somebody's gender yet. But we all have a gender identity, and it doesn't necessarily go with the body parts that we were born with, right? And so in some cases, in a kinship line, the kinship line can decide, okay, well, here is an offspring that has female body parts, female being the sex, but this person clearly identifies more with the work typically assigned to a male in that society, and therefore the gender is not feminine, it's masculine. And so the kinship group can decide, and does decide sometimes, this person's not a woman, this person's a man. And we will see this person as a man in a society. Okay, so that happens quite a lot. So I didn't write all of that down, and I don't know whether some of you did while we were discussing it, but it's important that you make yourself a note that kinship is, the reason we're going to spend so much time on this is that kinship is the single most important relationship that anthropologists look at worldwide to determine all kinds of things. Inheritance patterns, marriage patterns, residency patterns even, like the place where you're going to live out your days, residency pattern. We're going to be talking about those also, and kinship determines that. It will determine your political affiliation. It'll determine your position within the governmental structure. It will determine your position within the economic structure. The list literally goes on and on and on. That's how important kinship is, and we will hit each of these things as we move through these chapters. Okay, comments or questions so far? Basic stuff that I'm talking about so far. Now, in this, as I told you, in this unit, we're going to draw a lot of pictures. So I need to show you how we're going to draw a lot of pictures. A lot of you have your books open already to some of these diagrams, and but I need to give you like a legend or a key, like you find on a map or something, to know what all these pictures or diagrams stand for. Because these are the ones that we're going to be using when we do finally get to the time where we're going to draw our own family tree. So, and it'll actually, I don't know, to me it looks more like a root system when we finally get done than the tree itself. So if you think about the family tree metaphor, that yes, here's the bottom and it just kind of springs from the top. Kind of in anthropology, this is a little different. Like we tend to have less information about the older generations, and then it spreads out with all these offspring. To me it looks more like a root system than a family tree. But that's what we're going to do. Okay, so let's talk about these symbols really quick. All right, so common symbols that we use. The triangle represents a male individual, okay? That's supposed to be a circle and not an egg, but oh well, you do yours round, okay? It's supposed to be a circle. And circles represent females. Now, there's one other shape that anthropologists use to identify one particular person on the kinship chart, and that's the person that the chart focuses on, and it is a square, okay? The square can be male or female. It's for you, the anthropologist, to make note of when you're actually writing your ethnography. So if you are a female anthropologist conducting research someplace, is your informant, is your buddy in that culture likely to be male or likely to be female? Much more likely to be female, right? And vice versa. If you're a male doing anthropology in a particular place, your informant is 99% going to be males, right? So a lot of times, just given the fact of what sex category the anthropologist falls into, that's what sex category typically the informant is going to fall into. But we call this symbol, we call it ego. So ego is the symbol we use, and we're focusing our kinship diagram on that. So ego is the informant, which is our word from chapter 3, I think it was, or it is the person that's, we're talking about the bloodline or the marriage lines of this person.
So if we were doing our own family tree, then we would be the ego.
Exactly, yes. So when you get ready to do your own family tree, you would depict yourself as the square. Yes, ego. Okay. Then also there's symbols like this, this equal sign. Now, traditionally, this equal sign represents something called marriage. Do I need to define that term for you? That's not a joke, actually. We're going to be defining that term, and it might have an interesting definition by the time we get to it. We won't get to it today. But yes, typically we refer to this equal sign as a marriage union. Although many anthropologists today, there's another symbol that is just like a straight line that's going to link two people. And some anthropologists today use this straight line to show a union, a sexual union, regardless of whether the union is considered a marriage or not. Because marriage is very common throughout the world. It's almost a cultural universal, but anthropologists have discovered several different groups of people around the world that don't define marriage in the same way anybody else does, and marriage maybe isn't even a word that exists in their language. So, anyway, there is a way that you can use a straight line to link people in a diagram to show a sexual union. I am going to use this equal sign exclusively, just because that's the way I was taught. This gal who wrote this article here, or excuse me, this is an entire textbook, uses regularly, she will switch back and forth between the equal signs, so you can use either one. I'm trying to show one of the early diagrams. Yeah, so sometimes you can just, I guess I should circulate this. Let me let y'all just like thumb through that and look at the way these things are done. Okay, so a marriage or a sexual union. Okay. People die, right? People die, and so we need to be able to have a way to depict somebody that they existed, but they are now deceased. And so this is how you would do it. If they are male, this is how you would do it if they're female. You just put a diagonal line there, and that represents a deceased individual. And if a marriage or a sexual union ends, then you can draw that same diagonal line to represent a divorce or a dissolved union. Divorce or a dissolved union. And yes, I knew I was leaving one out. Here's the one that I'm leaving out. There is a set of symbols that you can combine into one thing. Here, there is a downward line, and this shows descent. This shows that someone has had an offspring. And since people can have multiple offspring, if you have multiple offspring, you would just have this downward line and then link the multiple offspring from that line. See how I did that? So you could just do one straight line if there's one daughter, but if there's two daughters and a son, you would link the two daughters and the son, for instance, coming out of either the sexual union between the parents or coming out of the marriage union between the parents. You see that? Somebody's phone is on, turn it off. Silent all the way. Is that yours? You got it? Okay. And that's shorter on one side than the other. There we go. Okay. So these are the symbols taken apart that you see all these different, diagrams drawn with all these symbols stretching in between them. So that's what the symbols mean. So you've got male, female, ego, who, yes, that's ego is going to be how you represent yourself when you finally do your family diagram. Marriage, sexual unions. A lot of us will probably have multiple instances of marriages in our own family trees or own family diagrams, and also sexual unions, right? So the sexual union can be identified with or without children, and when you have children, you draw it this way. And yes, you can even draw, I've never tried it before, but you can even draw like the Duggar family's family tree with just one. How many kids do they have now? 20? Is it 21? Something like that. So yeah. So you would just draw that down there with like 21 little roots or whatever coming off of it. And then how many grandkids are they up to now? I don't know either.
One of them has 3, the other one has a couple, I think.
Yeah, I don't know either, but yeah, okay. So yes, you can, and some of these diagrams that we're gonna draw are gonna have a heck of a lot of children, because even in America, I think the modern household average for children is 2.8 or something like that. Yeah, you divide, you count up all the number of like childbearing households in the United States and how many kids do they all have, and it's, yeah, so there's like an average 2.8 kids per
They don't
household.
round up, 2.8 just sounds.
No, there's a little edge toward 3, but we're not quite to 3 yet in the rounding up. So yeah, so some of our kinship diagrams, though, I learned from my students over the years. Some of you have a lot of siblings, or maybe your parents have a lot of siblings, and how do we show this? And my cousin over here, and this, that, and the other thing. So we'll have a lot of different relationships to try to focus on. Okay, so this should be all that we need. There are others, by the way. If you get any of if in your research, for your research paper, you find an ethnography about a culture, a particular cultural group that you want to focus on, you will probably see, if it's an ethnography, you will probably see a kinship diagram in there, or maybe multiple kinship diagrams. And there are additional symbols to this, like in some cultures, a mother-in-law has a particular working relationship with a son-in-law, for instance, and so there are symbols that are used similar to like a diagonal equal sign is what it looks like, to show like a relationship of people across generations. Okay, because that's another thing that we'll do. Oh, oops, I guess, did you zoom in? Okay, I got it. Okay. That's another thing that we'll do, is show you how to depict multiple generations. Okay. So the first thing that we need to talk about is the difference between the bloodline and the marriage bond. Okay, so there's a bloodline bond and a marriage bond that kinship can identify. And we have fancy words for these two things. First of all, we call the bloodline bond consanguine. A consanguine kin is someone related to you by bloodline. Consanguine kin, someone related by bloodline. I know there's at least a couple Spanish speakers in the room, and so you probably see maybe a familiar root word in Spanish here that would give you the kin. Sangre, yes, sangre for blood. So if you're any Spanish students in here, that'll be a quick and easy way to remember that this one is the one that relates to bloodline. Then you have another type of kin called affinal. Affinal kin, these are the marriage relationships. So we call them in-laws, right? A fenalkin, they are your in-laws, people who marry in, and very often when people marry in, they are considered to be somebody who is now related to you. And certainly if offspring are produced, the bloodline is affected by whoever is married into a group, okay? So, it's important to know the difference between consanguine kin and a fenalkin because when we look at the way bloodlines, and here's where the confusing part is probably gonna come into play. When you look at the way people measure kin around the world, the United States of America is kind of, we're not entirely the odd man out, but we have a unique way, an almost unique way of measuring bloodline, because in the USA, who are you considered to be related to more, your mom or your dad, or both equally? Both equally. We think of mom as mom, dad as dad, whether they gave birth to us or adopted us, mom is mom and dad is dad, and we belong equally to them. So when we think of grandparents, we have this word grandparent, right? We don't have a way, this word grandparent really doesn't tell the listener, is this person talking about mom's mom and dad or dad's mom and dad, right? We use the same word for those two groups, grandparent. A lot of us have to, you know, if you're like me, we had a certain name. We called grandma and nana, grandpa and nana on this side, and granny and peepaw on the other side, right? And that way we knew from the name we associated with them, oh, are we talking about mom's mom or dad's mom, right? And so a lot of us have those kinds of things, but in the rest of the world, where bloodline is traced in a different pattern, you don't have to give people names, fake names like grandpa and nana, compared to granny and peepaw, to depict who is, was that yours too? Did you have a peepaw?
Mine was granny and grandma, and my granddad was only one.
You only knew one of them? Yeah. What'd you call him?
Granddad.
Just granddad. Oh, very formal. Yeah. Yeah, we were, the country relatives were granny and peepaw. The city relatives were grandpa and nana. But anyway, yeah. So we have to, you know, give people special names so the listener knows who we're talking about. In other parts of the world, when you say grandparent, you're not talking about one side or the other. There is no possibility. You're only talking about the side that relates to the way that you measure bloodline in your particular part of the world. Okay, so let's get to that part. So in this kinship unit, one of the most confusing parts of it is who you are related to, okay? So we have a way of being related to each other, a bloodline relationship called matrilineal descent, or you will also hear me say the word matrilineage, okay? So you can use these two words interchangeably, okay? Matrilineal descent or a matrilineage, it means the same thing, okay? A matrilineage, this prefix comes from a Latin word, we would pronounce it in English, mater. Who wants to guess what that? Mother, that's absolutely right, yes. So matrilineal descent, where do you get your bloodline from if you're from a culture that has matrilineal descent? Mama. Mama is the place where you get your blood kin, your consanguine kin come from mama's side of the family. This is a bloodline measured from the mother's side of the family and only the mother's side of the family. Okay? Matrilineal. You get your bloodline membership through the mother's side of the family and the mother's side only. So, it is, some would call it female-centered, right? Gynocentric is the official word. However, both males and females can be related to each other through a mother's bloodline, right? So just because we're looking to a mother's side of the family does not mean that we don't have males that we are related to. Males have a position within a matrilineage just like females do. Okay? We're going to draw these in just a second. Okay, now the other more common dissect its definition here in just a little while. Maybe not today, but one of these lectures we're going to talk about paters. Okay, so a patrilineage is a bloodline that is measured. Well, you can guess how the rest of it is going to go, right? A bloodline that is measured from the father's side of the family and only the father's side. Father's side of the family and only the father's side of the family. And just like I told you with matrilineal descent, males and females both are related to each other through a father's bloodline. So even though this sounds androcentric or male-centered, there will be females in this picture once we start drawing these pictures and identifying who's related to whom. There are females in this picture, okay? And I'm mentioning this to you, I'm putting emphasis on this when I mention it to you because I've noticed in the past, I've been doing this a lot of years. I haven't been teaching kinship and gender as long as the lady who wrote this book has, but I've been doing it a lot of years, almost as long. And in my experience, students have a hard time remembering those words that just came out of my mouth. That even though this is centered around the mother's side of the family, and we typically associate the term mother with female, which is accurate 99% of the time, there are males who are also related to you through your mother's bloodline, right? Through your bloodline traced through mom's side. And in a patrilineage, this is of course male-centered or androcentric, and however, females also come from a male's bloodline, right? So both of these bloodlines are, it's not just going to be about males on this side and females on this side. No, it's males and females both, okay? It's just you have to trace it one side of the family to the next. Sir?
So patrilineage, would that be when, say, a lot of Europe, the wife takes the man's name and also John's son, or MC in Irish, or MAC in Scottish, son of? Exactly.
Exactly. And, in grad school I took an anthropology of the Bible class, and for those of you who have read that work of prose before, at the beginning of every chapter it'll say, so-and-so was the son of this person and the son of that person who begot that person and beget, or however you said that. Sometimes there's a line of, like 25 people who are begetting other people, right? Before we finally get to the subject line. And that's actually that's another way that it's depicted in literature throughout time. To show what kind of lineage are we talking about. And you're right, most Western cultures come from a patrilineal type pattern. The United States, being a Western culture, comes from a patrilineal type pattern, although we don't follow it strictly anymore. We have patriarchy, which is a different thing altogether. We have a patriarchal pattern, but that doesn't refer to a descent pattern. Okay, so this is about bloodlines. And we will also get to patriarchy here in a little while too. Maybe not today, but before the end of these units. Okay, so I've got another term on the board up here, unilineal descent. Because both matrilineages and patrilineages represent systems that anthropologists call unilineal descent. Of course, a descent system is where, we've got grandparents up here, your parents, and then you. So you're a descendant of your grandparents, right? And we'll be able to, in just a minute, we'll draw on the board, what that picture might look like. But in a unilineal descent system, you're talking about one or the other of these blood relationships, these consanguine relationships, or the other. And that's where your family, where your political authority, where your inheritance pattern, where your gender identity, where all of these different kinds of things that rely on kinship for their patterning, where it would come from, either the father's side or the mother's side, but not both. And this is this is one thing that students find particularly painful about kinship, in my experience, and in the author of this new textbook, in her experience also. Okay, so let me use this board really quick to draw some relationships that would depict either matrilineage or patrilineage. Are you good?
Well, I'm trying to figure out how is it decided which side is used to measure?
Okay, good question. Because it's not like a conscious decision that a community gets together on a Tuesday morning at 9 o'clock and they decide, you know, let's trace something from the mother's bloodline. This is a pattern, a cultural pattern that is inherited over millennia of the people living this way. So it's something just like you and I inherited, when we were born in this culture, we inherited a pattern where males are the dominant members of society, and we females, sorry, but we just have to kind of deal with that and struggle with that. So nobody decided on a Tuesday morning at 9 o'clock, the day we were born, that they were going to have, we're going to change this to a male-dominated society so that Monica and Kate experience, strife or something, or we have to try to break the glass ceiling or something, in our lifetime. So it's not something that is decided on, it's something that develops over time as populations grow. So remember, we started really this cultural discussion with subsistence strategies, and we talked about population densities, and then we talked about the economics and how do we share resources in a society. And these patterns develop in conjunction with those subsistence strategies and economic patterns building at the same time. So as population grows, there is a way to measure whose people are your people. And this is how we measure. In the majority of the world, patrilineage is how bloodline is measured in the majority of the world. It's going to seem odd to us. Actually, matrilineage has some very odd patterns because you trace your bloodline through your mother's side, and so when you ask a question like, who is your dad? The word dad might not even exist in a matrilineal society. Because mom is the important thing, dad is not.
So in that case, then if you're tracing, that would be your mother then her mother, then as opposed to your mother then her father would be just
Not, yes, although it's not, we've used the word lineal, but it's kind of misleading because it's not just me to my mom, to my mom's mom, to my mom's mom's mom, which is how we say it in anthropology. We don't use the word grandparent or uncle or aunt. We would say, ego's mom, ego's mom's mom. We would say it that way. It's kind of tedious if you're talking about 7 generations of people. But, ego's mom probably has siblings who share ego's mom's mom, right? So if you go up, let me just draw it. It'll be easier, and maybe y'all don't even know why I'm moving my hands like this, but I'm seeing all these kinship diagrams dancing around. I wish they were sugar plum fairies instead, but they're not. All these kinship diagrams dancing around. So let me just draw some, and we'll see. Okay. So here is a set of grandparents and another set of grandparents. And forgive me, I never quite, I do this kind of quickly, so sometimes my lines are off. These are supposed to be straight lines, okay? Okay, so these people are here. Did I get them? They're all supposed to be relatively even. Are you trying to draw it?
No, I wasn't.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I kept erasing it. Sorry, I was messing up for you. Yeah.
No, you're fine.
Okay, so let me see. I didn't draw my ego, so let me see. Which one do I want to be ego? I think I want him to be ego. So let me replace him. So I'm gonna have you erase something else. So okay, you got it. Okay. So there's our ego. So he's the focus of this kinship diagram. Let me just look at it for a second and make sure I have all the relationships in there that I need to have in there. Just 1 second. Okay, so I think. Wait a minute. Yes. Okay, so ego is a male. I'll just put that down here so we won't forget. So ego is a male in this picture. He's depicted, of course, as you know, by the square, and we've got all of these relationships that we're drawing. Now, a matrilineage is a bloodline that's traced only through the mother's side. So, where is ego's mother on this in this picture?
Triangle. No, I mean.
The circle are the females.
Yeah.
So here's ego. So one generation above, is this ego's mother? No, this gal is ego's mother. Okay. So, and I just used the word generation, of course, this is a word you're familiar with, but in a kinship diagram, the way you depict generations is by, they're supposed to be on straight lines, and I realize that my lines are not exactly, you know, I wasn't an art major, right? So my lines aren't exactly straight, but each of these people, this diagram I intended to depict 1, 2, 3, 4 generations, okay? So here's ego and here's ego's mother. So from looking at the definition of matrilineage, a bloodline through your mother's bloodline, what I want you to describe is, I want you to talk about ego's mother's something. Ego's mother's first son. Ego's mother's first daughter. Ego's mother's father. Ego's mother's first cousin. I want you to use those kinds of words to describe who on this picture needs to be colored in, like, oops, I need to color in ego, needs to be colored in like ego and his mom, because this is a matrilineage, but really quick, you have a question.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, do any of those lines represent the first one born or the second one born?
Oh, excellent, yes, I meant to tell you this already, yes. So not only do you see generation depicted here by these lines, but typically what you do is you put the eldest on the left and work toward the youngest.
Okay, cool, now I see.
Yeah, so did y'all hear his question? Yeah, so that's how you would do it, particularly when you're doing your own family tree, yes. So you put the eldest and then work toward the youngest. Okay, so we're good? Okay, so, all right. So this is, we're going to do a matrilineage in this diagram. So who else in this diagram should be colored in blue to represent other members of ego's matrilineage? You can't tell me grandmother.
His mother's mother.
Ego's mother's mother. So that is that person. Exactly. So ego's mother's mother. Yes. Who else?
Ego's mother's children?
Ego's mother's other children, right? Because they're of her bloodline. Yes. So ego's siblings, although we don't really use the word sibling, but yeah, ego's mother's other children. That's a good way to put it. So of course that's depicted by how many siblings does ego have? Three. These 3 people. Exactly. And who else is also related to ego through ego's mother's bloodline, or have we gotten everybody?
The mother's children?
No, ego's mother's brothers and sisters.
Right.
Ego's mother's siblings. Yes.
No, the mama's brothers.
Yes, ego's mother's brothers and ego's mother's sisters. Yes, you have to really like loosen up your mouth. Okay, so who are those people?
None of there except for the married.
Except for the marriage ones. Okay, so yes, so is this one right? This one?
Yes.
This one?
No.
This one?
Yes.
This one?
Yes.
This one?
Yes.
This one?
No.
Correct. Okay. Question now. Oh, yeah.
So technically, Ego's mother's brother is the father of Ego's wife.
Oh, you're getting a little bit ahead. Yes, you noticed that, did you? Yes, we're not going to be able to talk about cross-cousin marriage yet, but yes. Yes, you have noticed, and that's not a mistake. I intentionally put that in there because that's another thing that's going to go in,
So
a
he goes
little
from
while.
Arkansas?
Oh, very funny. Very, very funny, guys. No, they're not from Arkansas.
And back in the old times, don't they used to get married to their cousins, brothers and sisters?
Yeah,
Keep the
it's not
bloodline
actually, and it's not actually, so I just love it, number one, I just love it when people your age say back in the day. But yes.
I'm talking about it's better than the world.
I know what you mean, but yeah, it's actually not old-fashioned. I mean, we might not do it very commonly in our culture anymore, but honestly, within the last 50 to 100 years, people in America were still doing that. Now, it wasn't necessarily a first cousin like this, although it wasn't unheard of either. But yeah, quite often, people that we call cousins, and the word cousin is not necessarily a kinship term. We haven't gotten to the kinship terminology yet, but the word cousin isn't necessarily a word that even exists in other languages, which is one of the reasons why, or like aunt and uncle, because that's why I've asked you don't say, I didn't say don't say aunt and uncle specifically, but with grandparents, don't just say grandparents, you have to say Ego's mother's father or Ego's mother's mother to know who we're talking about here. And so you also have to say Ego's mother's siblings. You don't say Ego's aunts and uncles on his mother's side. What? You just said words that don't exist in my language, right? Or you, the anthropologist, has to be ready for somebody to say the words that exist in your informant's language that you might be ethnocentric about or something, right?
I think Einstein and Roosevelt married their first cousins.
Did they really?
Yeah, well, I know Einstein did. I'm
We
not
need
sure
a
about
Trivial
Franklin.
Pursuit game with this one on our team. Okay, so here's my question for you. But Monica, did you have another question? You were
No.
Okay. There are many people with frowns on their faces
I have a
during.
question.
Yes.
So like in some cultures or families, I know that they use their mother's maiden name and then they have two last names. So would that be matrilineal?
No, we were talking about that after class on Monday. No, it's not matrilineal. It is. Even in patrilineal societies, sometimes you can take the last name of the mother to identify you as to which affinal group you come from. So maybe not a consanguine group, but an affinal group. So even in patrilineages that maybe take double last names, which last name does the mother give to the child? The mother's mother or the mother's father? Do you know the answer to that in your culture? So like,
I don't go by it though, but
no, but like on the birth certificate, like you do, like on the roster, you have the two last names.
Roldo, Ada, but
Yeah.
like in Mexico or like where I go, it's sometimes there's like a de in front of it, like they will roll out like
Of that, from that,
from
or
there, and I
from
think
that.
That ties into that.
Ties into the kinship
But they
affiliation.
lose the mother's thing, like
Over time.
I'm saying Rodriguez and Carranza. When the son is born, they only keep Rodriguez. They don't necessarily.
And Rodriguez is the father,
Yeah, Rodriguez is the father.
but the Caranja
Yeah.
from the mother's side, was the Caranja the mother's father's last name or the mother's last name?
The mother's father.
See,
Yeah.
the mother's father's last name. Do you see what I mean when I'm asking you that question? So even though you get a last name from your mother's side and your father's side, it doesn't necessarily mean that both sides are recognized equally, especially when the mother had two last names also, and the one she transferred to her offspring was the one she got from her father's line.
I feel like it's not to lose. Like if it's a woman and she was the only woman that was born.
Oh, the only offspring was a woman, and so maybe the family name wasn't going to go on?
It's not to lose that last
A
name.
lot of that is the dynamic. A lot of times that's like the cultural current. Yeah, some of the reason why. Yes.
Now, do you stop at the ego, or do you color in the children as well of the ego?
That was going to be my next question. Not necessarily that exact phrasing, but I was going to ask you if we're finished. Like, are these the only people? Because look at all these people. I mean, this is a huge kinship diagram, right? Look at all these people, and so carefully look at this definition here. It's people you're related through the mother's bloodline. So we've got ego depicted, ego's siblings, because clearly in our picture, ego's siblings share his mother. We've got ego's mother's mother, because there's a clear trace from mother to mother. We've got ego's mother's siblings, because there's also a clear trace from that mother to those people. But some of ego's mother's siblings have offspring themselves. How many of them need to be colored in?
The ones that are not married.
All of them.
Yeah, wouldn't it be all of them?
Would it be? That's my question for you.
I'll
Yes.
color all of them.
You would color all of them, you would color all, look at this.
So just the circles?
Just the females, you mean?
Yeah.
Which ones? Like who? Like,
Those two.
so tell me, don't just point, but tell me like ego's, mother's,
Egos,
third sisters, blah blah.
Yeah.
Say it like, seriously, say it like that.
does not compute.
Well, come up and point to it if you want to. You want to come point to it? Or somebody. I know it doesn't compute yet, so it will. Okay, his kids. Okay, I thought you were talking about like this ego's same generation. So, okay, is Sloan right? Do we need to include, ego is a male, do we need to include ego's offspring in his bloodline? Why? And where is ego's wife from his matrilineage? That's what I need you to tell me. I need you to tell me. I need you to tell me who else in ego's generation should be colored in blue, or anybody. Maybe it's none, maybe it's all, but maybe it's only some of them. So which one is it?
Ego's the 4 on the ego's level will be the 4 on the right
Mothers.
Ego's mother's
Third siblings, children.
here. Yeah.
So
The 4
ego's
on the
mother's
right.
third sibling is 1, 2, 3. This 1, 2, 3. This guy.
So her
The
fourth
5th.
sibling.
The 5th sibling. Those children from the 5th sibling.
Y'all are confusing me.
Okay, so
So come up
yeah, the last
and
point
come up and point and tell why.
would be these 4 is from the woman's offspring. You know?
Is he right? Do those 4, let's start with those 4 and decide whether those need to be colored in before we go to the other ones. Is he right? We have a yes. We want to go with yes? I agree, yes, because of the way that he traced it, pointing is exactly right, because this is a female who has had offspring. This is a female who shares the matrilineage derived from the oldest generation that's depicted is right up there. So this female has offspring, and so any female, that means she's a mother from the mother's side. So just because we don't have an ego over here, we have ego over there, then these people are also part of ego's matrilineage.
So would that be his mother's 5th sibling?
Yeah, you could say that a variety of ways. Like what I would probably do is I would say ego's mother's youngest sister.
Oh.
Is what I would say. Because brother and sister are, words that are pretty commonly translated into other cultures. So ego's mother's youngest sister. Does ego's mother have any other sisters with offspring depicted on this chart? No. But ego's mother also has 2 brothers who are colored in as members of ego's matrilineage. One of those brothers has kids. Should ego's mother's brother's offspring be colored in as a member of ego's matrilineage?
No.
Why?
It's not
Not the mother.
That's the mother's family.
But
But it's male offspring.
It's a male sibling. It's ego's mother's opposite sex siblings' kids.
Yes. What you said.
Are you laughing at me? Yeah, these are. I mean, see, I told you, it's a brain twister, tongue twister, whatever you want to call it. It's all wrapped up in, puzzle and a riddle, all that stuff.
It's because it's a female that's came into the family, so it's not really part
Exactly. So if this is a matrilineal culture, we're only drawing ego's matrilineage, but all the other pictures on here, all the other unions and offspring and all these other kinds of things all of these relationships are from the same matrilineal culture. So if this is a matrilineal culture, we don't know where this one comes from. We just hope it's from a good family, right? We don't know where she comes from. But she's clearly not consanguinally related to anybody on here. She's only affinally related to somebody on here. So she's an in-law. She's an in-law, but she brings to this union her bloodline, okay? So she can be depicted on this matrilineal chart, but she's not a part of this matrilineage, and if bloodline is traced through the mother's side, this is not the mama. This is the mama, so these people come from a completely different lineage. So, even though you pointed out, hey, is this Ego's uncle's kids, and he's married to one of them, which led to the Arkansas joke. Yes, no, that's not his cousin in the same way that you and I think of cousins, because that's not in his bloodline. I told you, it was going like this.
I have a question. Though.
Yes.
So, if those kids were from Ego's mother's sister instead of her brother, then would they be a part
Yes.
of the matrilineal? And if that was so, would that mean his children are a part of the matrilineal lineage? Because that would mean his wife is.
Well, yeah, but that wouldn't happen.
Okay.
Yes. But that wouldn't happen. Yes.
So the kids from the Ego, in order to get to the fourth child, you'd have to go to a completely different like tree, right? Because the mother is different out of a different family.
Yeah, that's what I want.
Okay, the Ego's mother's
Ego's mother.
sibling would be the the first.
The youngest brother, Ego's mother.
The
youngest
second brother
Okay.
married or had an offspring with a woman from outside. So
From a different matrilineage.
yeah, so in order to trace the kid down here, you'd have to go to a completely different tree, right?
Yes, you'd have to go to her kinship
Yes,
chart,
okay.
which would, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, which kind of answers the question, the next question. Okay, so we're finished with this generation, we're finished with this generation, we're finished with this one. So are Ego's kids supposed to be colored in too as part of his matrilineage?
So it's not the mother.
No, because he is a male and you only trace it through the mother's side. Did you draw it?
Yeah,
Okay, so
But that would also be different if the ego was a female, wouldn't it? So the ego can actually be a male or female.
yes,
so would
ego,
you color
yes,
them in if the
absolutely.
ego
Since
was
we're-
the
since
female?
We're talking about unilineal descent traced along gender lines. Yes, but our ego was a male, so that's why it looks like this. Yeah. Okay. Now, you all want to do this yet?
Yeah.
You want more? Well, we only have 5 minutes. Yeah, I'll go ahead and let you stew over this over the weekend. I'm gonna, I feel like torturing you a little bit. Oh, no, what I mean is I'm gonna go ahead and tell you this last thing. Is what I mean. I'm gonna let you stew over it just a little bit. I want to torture you over the weekend. Okay, so, in this picture, what tends to happen when you trace your bloodline through one side of the family or another, a residency pattern tends to also develop as a cultural practice in these societies. And in matrilineages, what you find most often is matralocality. Matralocality. Again, we see matra as a prefix here that comes from mater, so we're talking about a mother. A locality means a place. So this is a residency pattern. It's a cultural requirement, a residency pattern in which marriage partners live with or near the mother's side of the family. I didn't mean to say mother's side of the family, I meant to say wife's side of the family. With or near the bride's side of the family. okay? Matrilocality. So, as you know, as people reproduce over time and reproduce more and more people, those people reproduce more and more people, population density grows, right? So, what is this? What is that? Is it off now, so it won't disturb anybody else? Is it you, Lucas?
No.
Is it off? Okay. What was I just saying? What was I saying? When people live in this residency pattern. We all got our brains back on this? Okay. So when people, expand and expand in population, population density grows. If you have a residency pattern like this, then all of these people who are colored in end up living, like it says, with or near the bride's side of the family. So here's a bride, so where is she and her offspring at least going to live? Near this woman and this man and this man, this man and this woman. And sometimes this man might be around and sometimes that man might be around, but if they're from the same matrilineage, you probably have to live, or you probably have to at least be in contact with your other, the matrilineage that you came from, right? So over time, you end up with an entire, here's where we can bring the Arkansas joke back in. Over time, you end up with an entire population of people, maybe the size of Arkansas, or maybe the size of Indonesia or something, where almost everybody is your kin. Because you've lived next to each other for so long, everybody is, you will encounter something like a 352nd cousin or something. Whereas maybe we only know first, second, maybe third cousin, and then we're kind of like unaware of any sort of relationship after that. But you can literally have a population the size of the state of Arkansas or a small country where literally every single person is related to each other in some kind of way, or at least identifies. We certainly wouldn't recognize each other on the street, but we at least identify with everybody as having this affinal and or consanguine relationship from some ancestor so far in our past that we can't specify who it was, but we know he was somewhere there or she was somewhere there, right? So we're going to pick up with residency patterns, and if this person isn't necessarily full-time with the household, does that leave these kids fatherless? Or who would be daddy to these kids? That's where we'll pick up on Monday. It'll be a show like